Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Riya. Today I have a brand new guest, Shanmuganathan. He goes by Shanmuganathan, and he is an economist and an investor. And he has been contributing regularly to pgurus.com. He has written a lot of articles. And today we're going to talk about the possibility of gold reaching $24,000 an ounce by maybe 2030 or something of that nature. The number is the more significant part. The year is not so much significant. Let's welcome Shanmuganathan sir. Namaskaram sir, how are you?
Shri Namaskaram. Thanks for having me, and good morning, good evening to all your audience.
Thank you so much. You are being seen from all over the world, wherever you guys are, viewers. Just let's give out a big shout out to Shanmuganathan ji, and he has put out a fantastic PowerPoint presentation. He's going to walk us through that. It's important to understand how we got here before we start understanding why gold might go up to $24,000 an ounce. Sir, all grandmas in India will be instant millionaires if your words come true. Over to you.
Thanks, Shri, and I'm particularly very happy we are doing it on Thanksgiving Day. I don't know how many people are aware of the history of Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving,
Yes.
as was done by the Pilgrims, was a celebration of capitalism and property rights. So I'm very, very happy to be doing it on this particular occasion. We can start with the presentation if you can run it, Shri.
Yes, I'm bringing it up. Yeah, sir.
So for brief context, I had published a book last year, and it was titled RIP USD 1971 to 202X. The most of what I'm going to talk today is based on that particular contents of the book. And I also publish at least 30-40 articles on PGurus, as Shri mentioned. A few other websites also regularly carry my columns. These are Zero Hedge, Dollar Collapse, 321 Gold. If you look at the other three sites, all these three sites come with a kind of tilt towards Austrian economics, which is what I'm going to talk to you about. Okay, so I'll just get on with the presentation. So as part of the book, I had made a series of forecasts, 6 forecasts, and I've listed them here. I'll probably run through just 1 or 2 of them. The first is about gold itself. I said gold is going to get into a supercharged bull market. And the reason being that central banks will shift to gold as a reserve asset instead of using the US dollar, which means we are going to get into some form of a gold standard by the end of this decade. And they'd given a price range forecast for gold, which is it's going to be at least $24,000 to an ounce. As to the rationale for this particular number, we'll get on to it later. And I've also spoken about stocks, bonds, and housing getting into a long-term bear market that is going to last for a very, very long time, at least a decade or longer. And the US economy itself, it is going to get into an inflationary depression, which is you are going to have high inflation, and at the same time, the US economy is going to contract in at least double-digit terms. So these are some of the forecasts that I have actually made as part of the book. A lot of these things have started playing out. And if you look at the one forecast that has not yet started playing out, it's about Bitcoin. Bitcoin was about $69,000 when I published the book. I said it's going to go very close to zero, over this period, but it's actually gone up. But I think this is this is kind of temporary, and it's part of the AI bubble that is there at this particular point in time. I think over the next few years, it's going to lose a substantial part of its price. Yes, Steve, we can go on to the next slide. So my thoughts are based on the Austrian School of Economics, as I mentioned. There are 4 schools of thoughts in economics. On the extreme left, you've got Marxism. Then left of center, you got Keynesian. And then right of center, you got the monetarist school. And the far right is known as the Austrian School of Economics. One way of conceiving of this is that on the far left, you've got 100% government control of all activity. And on the far right, you've got almost 0% control of economic activity. Now, each of these economic schools also has a political philosophy behind it. And if you look at the Austrian School of Economics, there is a political philosophy that is known as libertarianism that is associated with the Austrian School of Economics. Yeah, Shane, the next slide, please. So, what are the defining features of the Austrian School of Economics? What distinguishes the Austrian School from the other schools of thoughts are two primary traits. The first is, if you look at the federal government, it is extremely limited in terms of what you can do. Uh, all the powers of the federal government are just limited to two things, okay, which is protection of private property from internal as well as external aggressors, which means having the police as well as the army, and then enforcing legal contracts, which is your courts and justice systems. So the federal government is typically given only these two powers under this particular school of thought. And the second aspect is having sound money, okay, which is to say having a gold standard, or an even better way to look at it is the absence of a central bank. If you read through the US Constitution, okay, there is no mention of the word central bank there. And all of the founding fathers of the US, okay, they were opposed to having the concept of a central bank at all. And they're very, very clear that it had to be a free banking system with gold and silver circulating as money. Yeah, Sri.
So there was. Let's just go back 1 second. I have, if my memory serves correctly, Alexander Hamilton and
Right.
around the founding fathers of the
Right.
United States,
Right.
and Washington was the president, and Alexander Hamilton wanted to have a bank, and Jefferson, I think, did not, and they went back and forth, big bashing. Finally, I think Alexander Hamilton convinced George Washington to have a bank. So why do you think Jefferson was opposed to having a bank, a national bank?
Okay, so before the Federal Reserve came in 1913, the US had two experiments with central banks. I think one was starting from 1790 odd for a period of 20 years. And then again, after a gap of another 10, 15 years for another 20 years. In particular, Thomas Jefferson was opposed to it, as well as James Madison. Okay, both these people were opposed to having the concept of a central bank because they knew that it would become the engine of monetary inflation, that the central bank would be used to fund the deficits of the government. In fact, if you actually go back and read the Jefferson papers, he wanted to add a line to the Constitution wherein when the federal government would be prevented from borrowing at all, okay, even borrowing from the market. That was the extreme extent to which, if you look at Thomas Jefferson, believed that the powers of the government should be limited. Now, as soon as you allow a central bank and the government to borrow from the central bank, okay, then there's no limit on how much they could spend, and which is what we have seen that's been happening to the US in the last 50 years.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm sorry to take you back. Viewers, sure. I have just finished watching a Netflix series called Killed by Lightning. It's about, it takes place in the 1880s. James Garfield, who was president for only 100 days, but he did some fascinating things. Do watch it because it takes you back in time to see how the politics in the United States were in 1880. That is 145 years from now. Right. Unfortunately, not much has changed. I am giving you the plot. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, the next slide. So I'm just going back in time, say to about 8000 BC, a bit back in time, and how we started with commerce. We started with the barter system, and then we moved on to having a medium of exchange. Actually, we can go on to the next slide, and if you look at the medium of exchange, our first medium of exchange that we used happened to be wheat and barley. Okay, for a period of about, I'm starting with 8000 because 8000 was the period in which we started agriculture, and agriculture was also the starting point of actually having savings. Till you had savings, there's absolutely nothing possible in terms of trade. So like 8000 is when we started having agriculture, and then barter system started at that particular point in time, right? Wheat was the first medium of exchange, and that was almost for a period of about 1000 years. And then from 4000 onwards, it was iron and copper, after which we shifted to gold and silver. Now, gold and silver have been money from 2800 onwards up till 1971, almost for a period of 5000 years. Unparalleled system it was. Although gold has been money for 5000 years, we have moved in terms of how convenient we can make the gold for actually conducting the transactions. So around 600 BC, we started having standardized coins. And then around 1820 is when we started having these currency notes, which are backed by or convertible to gold. And up till 1913, you had the system called free banking, wherein banks were free to issue their own currency as long as it was convertible to gold. So this is the history of money, and from 1971, the system that we have is what we can call as a free floating currency, wherein it is not backed by anything, it's not convertible to anything, and the central bank is free to print what it wants to print.
Fiat.
Yeah, fiat currencies. Okay, so if you ask a question, why is it that this gold and silver have been money for the last 5,000 years? It was these 5 properties, D3C2 as I call it. Any medium of exchange that we use had to be desirable, and then it had to be durable. It could survive long periods of time, hundreds of years, thousands of years, and then it had to be divisible. If you look at gold, you could actually divide it into 0.001 gram, and it had to be very convenient. Convenient in the sense, like in a small space, it could actually contain a huge amount of value, and it had to be consistent, which is each piece had to be exactly the same as another piece. Now, of these 5 attributes, I would look at desirable as being the most important. It had to be a must-have stuff, and all other 4 properties are actually good to have. Now, if you think about it a bit, we started with wheat. Why did people accept wheat as a medium of exchange? And that was because they know that even if nobody else wanted it, they could consume it, and they also knew that almost everybody wanted wheat. So it was easily acceptable by all other parties, and hence it became a medium of exchange. For the very same reasons, iron and copper, as well as gold and silver, actually became money later on. And the reason why iron actually displaced wheat was that it was more durable, as was the case with gold and silver. So gold and silver satisfies these 5 properties the best, and hence has been the ideal form of money for 5,000 years.
So one question before we go to the next row. Silver oxidizes, doesn't it?
Silver oxidizes, but not much. Okay, maybe just at most 0.1% or 1%, not more than that. So even if you drop a silver at the bottom of an ocean floor, after 100 years, you'll probably be able to recover 99% of it.
Okay. So please continue, sir.
Yeah. Okay, we can go to the next slide.
No. I want you to touch upon the last two rows. Cryptocurrency. You said it's not desirable. Why do you say that?
Okay. So you have to understand what desirable means. It is for its non-monetary use. You should be able to do something else with it other than using it for conducting monetary transactions. Now, what can you do with Bitcoin? There's nothing that you can do with Bitcoin. People call it as if you see CNBC, people call all the cryptos and Bitcoin as some kind of digital gold. Okay, but it's got none of the properties of gold. Okay, gold is very ductile, extremely conductive, extremely reflective. Okay, and it can be used in a whole host of industrial applications. We don't use it simply because it's very rare, extremely expensive to use it. In almost 80% of the cases where we use silver, we can use gold, but we just can't afford to use it, right? Bitcoin, what can you do with it? There's nothing that you can do with it. I call it as fool's gold, which just has a price and it's got zero intrinsic value.
Thank you, sir. Actually, I remember, I don't know, maybe I saw it in a movie. Pure gold is actually soft. And to check if it is pure gold or not, the character will bite on it.
Right.
And then he gets his teeth mark. Oh, yeah, okay, this is pure gold. Yeah. We're talking about a historical movie.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. In fact, if you go back to the old days where gold was used as money, actually people use gold dust as money. Okay, so this is the point wherein we actually changed from using gold onto using pieces of paper, okay, which is August 15, 1971. Okay, what it means, this is a significant phenomenal change that very few people understand and appreciate. On August 14th, if you wanted to buy a car, say for $3,500, it meant you are giving 100 ounces of gold, and in exchange you are getting a car. The same thing 2 days later, August 16th, you are giving pieces of paper that cost nothing to actually produce, and you are getting a car in exchange. Now, what happens when you give that kind of a power to the government, right? If they can print at will, and that's what we see actually happening. Actually, you can go to the next slide, please. So you have seen an explosion in debt in the US. If you see the amount of debt that was there under the gold standard, or or even under the gold exchange standard that was there till 1971, it was very, very limited. It took about 200 years to reach the first $1 trillion. And after they went off the gold standard, like in the year 1971, the debt has been exploding. And if you look at it, we had about $1 trillion every quarter now. Okay, that is the explosion that we have seen in debt. And after 1971, we have not had a single year where the US has actually balanced its budget, because there's no need for the government. They could always get the central bank to monetize the debt. Now, if you look at the number, they'll say that the US actually balanced the budget in 1991 as well as somewhere towards the end of the Clinton years. All these are accounting surpluses. The actual way to look out if a government actually balances a budget is to look at the national debt. And there has not been a single year after 1971 where the national debt actually went down. And at this point, we are closing. I guess we'll easily hit 40 trillion in the next few months. And by the end of the Trump's term, we are looking at $50 trillion. Okay, that is the amount of national debt that the US has actually added because of this fiat currency system that we have in place since 1971. Yeah, Sri, we can go on.
Sure.
Okay, so this is inflation. Now, all of us think we understand inflation. Okay, but this is amongst the most misunderstood terms in the concept of economics. And even if you talk to professors of economics, you would be surprised how they misunderstand this particular term. Now, if you actually go back to the 1800 and then look at a Webster's dictionary, okay, they would talk about inflation in the context of a currency. Inflation used to refer to as an expansion, or increase or decrease in the amount of currency like in circulation. Like, it never spoke about prices. So currency, it was always inflation of the currency. And if you really think about it, okay, when we talk about consumer prices, okay, we don't say consumer prices inflate or deflates. Okay, we say prices goes up, prices comes down, prices increase, prices decrease. But what inflates or deflates? And that is the supply of money. So inflation used to refer to an increase in the supply of money. Now, we started changing this definition somewhere in the 1930s, okay, wherein we said an increase in the supply of money resulting in higher prices. So we added the cause and the result into a single definition. And this change happened in the 1930s and 50s. And in the 1960s, okay, when we had all of the socialist programs coming into the US, okay, we dropped the causative factors, and inflation really was changed to say that it's an increase in the prices of a basket on goods or services. Now, it's extremely easy to understand why it is the case. Now, if you refer to inflation as an increase in the supply of money, okay, then it's very obvious who is doing it. It is a central bank. There can be no other source that can be the cause of inflation. But if you refer to inflation as an increase in prices, okay, then you can find hundreds of reasons. You can find weather, you can find the greedy businessmen, you can find oil countries, you can blame war, you can blame God, whatever you want, right? So once you change the definition from an objective causative factor to price, okay, then it's easy to shift the blame away from the central bank, which is the only reason we have inflation. If you don't have monetary inflation, which is central bank creating excess credit, you cannot have price inflation. Actually, next. So I'm just distinguishing between these two things. Okay, first is the monetary inflation, which is an increase in the supply of money and credit, and then price inflation, which is an increase in the price of a basket of goods and services. The single most important thing to realize is that monetary inflation is a cause and price inflation is the effect. In the absence of monetary inflation, you cannot have price inflation. Actually, next slide, please. Okay, so this is the history of the US in terms of price inflation that we have seen, right? From 1799, okay, for almost 120 years up till 1913, you had falling prices. You had falling prices for 120 years, okay, like in conjunction with massive economic growth. In fact, all of the major innovations that you can think about, trains, cars, planes, computers, pharmaceuticals, everything happened under the classical gold standard, under conditions of falling prices. Prices were down by at least 40%. In fact, if you kind of factor in the vast improvements in quality, okay, most people say prices fell by as much as 80% in this 120-year period. Okay, so that was the benefit of a gold standard, wherein you had falling prices and you had vastly improved standards of living. US, in fact, transitioned from a very poor agrarian society to the richest country in the world under the classical gold standard. And then the period comes in between 1913, wherein you had the Federal Reserve, up till 1917, wherein it operated on a gold standard, but not the classical gold standard. you had 2 or 3 different forms of gold standard in this the 50-60 year period. Uh, I would use the term gold exchange standard loosely. It is still a form of gold standard, although not as tight as what existed under the classical gold standard. So under this period, you still witnessed an increase in prices, although nowhere close to what happened after 1971. So that was the transition years, and then after 1971, you have this massive inflation happening. Now, I said when I say the massive inflation, if you look at the monetary inflation that has happened in the last 15-20 years, that has not flowed through onto price inflation. So when I said monetary inflation and price inflation as being the cause and effect, there is a lag between these two things happening. If you look at the developing economies or the smaller countries, it is like it's almost simultaneous, maybe 6 months, maybe 12 months lag. Okay, but if you look at a country that has a reserve currency status of the world, okay, this lag could be enormous, could be 10-15 years, and which is what we have seen. So from 2008, we have seen a period wherein we have had massive monetary inflation and consumer prices have not started going up. In fact, it started going up, okay, maybe just 2 years back, and the worst lies ahead. If I were to forecast the price inflation that is going to happen over the next 5-10 years, I would say like it's going to be in double digits, and the first digit is not necessarily going to be 1. Okay, that is the extent of price inflation that you're going to witness in the US. And if you look at,
you said the first digit is not necessarily going to be 1. You're talking 20% per year?
We could see. I mean, we could easily see if you actually go back to 1970s. At that point, US had price inflation of 14%, right? And if you look at the period before that, price inflation was not so much. And if you look at the amount of monetary inflation that has happened, if you look at the national debt by the year 2008, okay, that was just 10 trillion. I mean, that is 230 odd years to reach the first 10 trillion. And then you have had 30 trillion in the next 15 years. And if you look at the expansion in the Fed sheet, 8 or 10 times an expansion in the Fed balance sheet. Okay. And if you look at the QE that's going to be oncoming, okay, that's going to be much worse. Okay. Now, I've just added the official debt. Sure.
You are a data enthusiast. You can probably churn this thing. I don't know if you can do it. Amazon.com.
Yeah.
If you start following Amazon.com sales for the last 6-7 years, right? I would be interested in knowing how many items were there per sale, meaning like I per swipe of my credit card, how many items were being bought. I bet you in the last 18 months, that average item count per sale has come down, which means people are buying things, only those things that they need, which means people are already feeling poorer. My dear man, if you're saying that it's going to be going up by 20%, I don't know. That's going to be huge ramifications. Already, people are screaming that we are living from paycheck to paycheck.
No, Shri, that is true. That is the reality of the situation. If you look at the debt of the US, it is close to $40 trillion. And
yes,
and if you look at the unfunded liabilities of the US, it's close to $200 trillion. So if you think of it as a company, it's a company having revenues of $5 trillion. I'm not talking profits, revenues of $5 trillion, having a debt of $250 trillion. Somebody should be mad to lend them money, right? So this funding of the US government deficits, that is going to completely stop in the next few years. And if you see the news that has come out from the Japanese government in the last few days, how they are going to fund their bills, it should not be shocking at all. So the Fed can do all it wants at the short end, okay, but the long end rates are going to rise in the years ahead substantially, and that is because of the price inflation that lies ahead in the US.
Sir, go ahead, sir.
Okay, so this is the worst case scenario for the US, and I would not think it as being improbable at all at this particular point in time. So you've got $250 trillion of debt, and there are only two ways to do it. Either you can default expressly stating, sorry, we don't have the money, we can't give it to you, so take a haircut of 50, 60, 70% on your social security, Medicare, or the debt that's been explicitly given to the US. Or option 2, which is default through monetary inflation, which is the US government is just going to print its money and give it. Now, the US government is the only government in the world that has a privilege wherein the debt has been denominated its own currency. No other government has this privilege. Say, for example, if you look at India, a lot of the debt is denominated like in terms of US dollars. and we can't print US dollars and give it. So somewhere we'll have to figure out a way to handle it. But in the case of US, for all of the debt that they have, $250 trillion, they can print $250 trillion and actually hand it over. And that's what they are exactly going to do, if you see. They are never going to default. Which politician has the courage to say, sorry, I can't give you the money? It's a much, much easier option to just print and give it. And you can blame the inflation on Gulf, on China, on India. I mean, you can find hundreds of reasons. Whereas the only reason why prices have been going up is because the Federal Reserve has been printing too much money. And we know that. So this is the worst case scenario for the US. How probable it is? I don't think it's improbable. I would say at least 10-20% chance at this particular point in time. How it plays out, we'll see in the future.
Shanmuganathan ji,
Yeah.
India can have a special side deal with North Korea, and they can also print dollars.
So that's going to be fun to see. And so how does the US prevent hyperinflation? And there's been only one solution to it. If you look at 5,000 years of history, and that is to go back to the gold standard. If you look at 1980, actually the price of gold at that particular point in time had touched $850 an ounce. And at that particular point in time, the US could have gone back to the gold standard because the amount of gold they had matched the currency in circulation. That was a golden opportunity that Reagan missed. Okay, but now it's gone back again. And if you see the ratio, it's actually 12 times. And as when I wrote the book, the price was about $2,000. So if the price of gold were to go to about 12 times that particular price, then the US can technically actually go back to a gold standard. Okay, now people often say that we don't have enough gold. Okay, that is not correct at all. It is the price of gold that is important. At the correct price of gold, okay, you can go back to a gold standard. Now there are different versions of the gold standard. You can use different components of the money supply. I've used a base money supply, which is M0 as it's called. And if you want to back the base money by 100% with gold, okay, then the price of gold has to be at least $24,000. That's how you get this number, $24,000 now. At a price of $24,000, US can go back to the gold standard even today.
So what you're saying is not what they are talking about, that in their asset book, they are accounting for every ounce of gold that they have at, I think, $42. And
Okay.
Are you saying that that should be up to 25,000 and that basically erases all their debt, the 38 trillion?
But it doesn't erase the debt. Okay, what it means is you can go back to a gold standard. Okay, wherein the future governments cannot create debt. See, what a gold standard does is to actually enforce some kind of a discipline on the government wherein they cannot borrow.
Totally.
Correct.
Totally.
Okay, so that's what a gold standard does to the government.
So,
Debt doesn't go with it. Debt still is there, but it's covered by the gold that they have.
This is a fascinating conversation. I actually understand much of what you're saying, although some is pure economics. I need to do a little bit of research. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I'm just going to look ahead as to what is going to happen in 2026. Now, if you look at GFC 2008, numerous reports have come out as to what caused the housing bubble and the global financial crisis of 2008. Which is to say all kinds of bad lending practices, etc., etc. I have not seen a single report then published by Austrian economics that lays the blame as to where it should really belong, which is at the doorstep of the Federal Reserve. They lowered the interest rate, and this was done by Greenspan, and he actually encouraged people to go on arms wherein they could get loan at 1%, and people indiscriminately bought houses. So the Federal Reserve inflated the housing bubble, and that led to the GFC. Now, if you look at what has happened after 2008 and what has Federal Reserve done, they get interest rates at 0% for 15 years, and you have had QE's massive expansion of the balance sheet. So US is floating on a sea of asset bubbles if you look at it. Okay, you have got an AI bubble, and actually plenty of people have written about this in the last few weeks. And you've got a housing bubble 2.0, which is much, much bigger than the housing bubble of 2008. And you have got an unprecedented bond bubble wherein you have a country that has $250 trillion in debt, wherein people are able to, and it's still able to issue debt long-term for about 6-7%. Okay, so these three bubbles are going to burst one after the other. If you ask me, I think the AI bubble will actually burst first. and the bond bubble is going to take a long time to unravel. But what this is going to do is to ensure that the global currency crisis sets in. Okay, people are going. I would say like it started about 2 years back when gold prices actually started moving from 2,000 to 4,000. People don't understand the significance of gold prices going up. That is going to be the replacement for the US dollar in the future. But it's going to become very apparent starting next year, if you ask me, as and when this asset bubbles burst, at which point the Fed will go back to the tool that it has. The all that the Federal Reserve has is a printing press. That is the like only hammer it has, and it's going to use it with a heavy force. And if on top of the existing debt you add QEs, okay, what is going to happen to gold? I think gold is going to skyrocket in the years ahead.
So one of the explanations given for the rise of gold from 2000 to 4000 is that many central banks started buying gold. Essentially, think of it like, we don't trust the US dollar anymore, so therefore we are going to do this.
Correct.
And now it has kind of gone down a little bit. I think it went up to 4.2. Now it's 4.1, I think, 4,100. When you do this move of setting the asset value for gold that the United States has at $24,000 per ounce, the market price for gold is set by, today I think it is set by London, some exchange there. I don't remember the name. How do you think that will happen? That will change. Would that also go to 24,000?
No, I'm talking about the market price. I'm not talking about the US government revaluing.
Actually, so you're just saying that this 4K is going to keep going up and up and up and up. And
yeah. Absolutely. See, the US government, the last thing like it wants is a gold standard, right? I mean, why would a politician want to force himself to live under a balanced budget condition? Okay, the market is going to put a price, at which point, wherein the US has no option but to go back to a gold standard. And actually quite independent of whether US goes back to a gold standard or not, some other countries are going to go to a gold standard. I'm sure already Russia, China are kind of contemplating it very heavily. Or the other possibility could be BRICS. Okay, but my guess is it's going to be either Russia or China, or possibly both going to gold standard in the next few years. And at which point the US will have no choice but to go back to a gold standard. And if it has to go back to a gold standard, the price has to be at least $25,000 an ounce.
You make an interesting point. Are we done with slides, or you want to do some more?
I think that's all. Maybe I just have got one more slide.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So, okay. So what can be done? Okay. Now, if you look at governments all across the world, there are very few governments that actually live under the principles of what they have to do, what they ought to be doing. Examples could be Switzerland, Singapore, okay, then maybe New Zealand. Okay, but if you look at all other governments, they live way beyond their means, way more than what they're supposed to do. And if you look at one country that has been doing the correct things, it's actually Argentina under Javier Milei. Now, Javier Milei was an economics professor. He subscribes to the Austrian School of Economics, and he has made radical transformations as part of his government in the last 2 years. Okay, when he took over just 18 months back, Argentina had a month-on-month price inflation of 30%. Okay, that's month-on-month. Okay, within 12 months, he had just got it down to annualized single digits. How did he do it? It's not magic. He just balanced the budget. That's all it takes to bring down. Okay, and the famous chainsaw that he campaigned on the promise of cutting down government, cutting down all kinds of subsidies, and he won. He won with that particular mandate. Right? People understand if you actually explain it to them like in the correct way. And he also has a department of deregulation wherein every day they remove 5 regulations. So these are the kind of transformation, very, very radical transformation that the US has to do if it wants to go back to its glory. Yeah, see, like I'm done with the presentations. Yeah.
Yeah. So see, I'll since we are on that topic, in one signature of Barack Obama, when he introduced or he made Obamacare the law, it's also called as some other Affordable Care Act or something.
Affordable Care Act, correct.
Affordable Care Act. United States went from being the world's biggest capitalist country to the world's biggest socialist country.
Correct.
And that kind of a bonanza, where if your family income was less than $95,000 a year, that was the number when it was introduced. Okay. Now that number has risen, I think, to some slightly higher number, 150 or something. Then you enjoyed, you brought under your slab insurance labs were way down. And basically what it is that the government is subsidizing the medical costs, whether it is hospital bills or medication or whatever, and that on its own has created a huge racket. Medicaid fraud is one of the biggest frauds in the United States today. So if Trump were to dial back on the printing of notes, the first thing he should start taking aim at is Obamacare. And when he tries to touch that, now even Republicans are resisting.
Correct.
So I mean, it's not easy. I don't know how Milei handled it and did it. Maybe Argentina. How big is the Argentinian economy, sir? GDP?
It's not very big. I don't know the exact number. Okay, but it's a few $100 billion if you ask me.
Yeah. So when you have some smaller numbers, it's easy to handle. In the United States, go ahead.
You're right about what you're saying. Okay, but more than anything else, you need somebody who kind of believes in the concept that the government's budget has to be balanced, right? You are Musk saying all the things and doing all the things, but look at what happened to Doge. Okay, each time you go and touch a political constituency, there's a huge boomerang, right? And it's always easy to give in, and that's what has been happening, right? And the deterioration of the U.S. From a capitalistic country started in 1913. It didn't start with Obamacare. It's been going on for 100 years, and it's been if you look at the lead that the U.S. had in 1913. If you
could move to the center, if you could move to the center, okay. a little bit more. Yeah.
Okay, by about 1950 or 60, okay, that was the peak of the US, and they had about 90% of the world's manufacturing capacity in the US, right? That was the power that the US had built under the gold standard, and it slowly started deteriorating. It is not a change that happened in the last 5-10 years. It's been happening at least for the last 50 years or maybe the last 100 years, depending on how we want to look at it.
See, you go back to that graph that you showed, 1971. The angle of inclination was not that bad.
Right, not bad.
Come
Correct.
2000 and on, it is just taken off vertically. That is a big concern. I have one question.
And you mentioned that Trump, what he does, it's not that there are not, even within the Republican Party, okay, you've got people who kind of subscribe to these concepts, right? Okay, you've got Dr. Rand Paul, okay, then you've got Thomas Massey. Trump doesn't like these people, as and when they talk about balanced budgets. He tried to remove Thomas Massey from the party itself, right? So Trump doesn't believe in the concept of a balanced budget. So till you have somebody with that particular mindset, it's going to be very hard to achieve it.
You're absolutely right. He is fixated upon lowering interest rates, not understanding the other side of the whole story, why it is being kept high.
Right.
And that is a problem. I agree. And he has this bulldozer attitude, where he'll just try to bulldoze his point across and try to get people to do it. In fact, I'm hearing that as early as next month we may have a new Fed chairman.
Correct.
And
yeah.
He might start
lowering
the. Yeah.
He's a super dog. So yeah. The US is headed in the direction of hyperinflation. If you look at everything that is happening around you.
The problem is United States is used to the 2% inflation theory for a long time. I'll give you a simple example. One of the biggest consumer items is electronics, anything to do with electronics.
Yes.
Smartphone is one of the bigger ones, but anything else, right? We have a lot of devices there, that and all that. Today's sale price became tomorrow's regular price. Have you heard this joke?
Correct, it is.
Right?
It is.
So when we do hyperinflation, that will no longer hold. And what happens then is you will have periods where people feel that is the right price, and there'll be a lot of economic activity, and then they'll shut down. That's what I was mentioning about finding the average number of items in every cart of Amazon sale. Because that will give you an idea that it has come down. It's come down from 6, 7 to 2 to 3 perhaps now. And it's just incredible. You can, if you're an Amazon Prime member, you can even buy a $2 toothpaste. Because why I said $2 toothpaste is, remember Tamil saying, right? Sundaka kapanam, samakuli mukkapanam.
Okay.
It becomes the same thing because it takes $4 to transport a $2 item, and yet Amazon does it because you are an Amazon Prime member. So these things become ludicrous. Sir, one question:
Sure.
216,000 metric tons is all the gold that has been excavated since the time people kept track.
Correct.
So if you go to a gold-backed currency, at some point of time, you are going to go out of affordability.
No,
Uh,
yeah.
so then again, you will go back to fiat currency, isn't it?
No, this is the same point I had made earlier, Sri. It is not the quantity of gold, it's the price of gold. At the correct
Mm.
price of gold, you can go back to a gold standard. I'm sure the world economy can actually function half the gold that we have today. Okay. At the correct price, we can go back to a gold standard. And we
So
function
in
on
your
a gold
opinion
standard.
today, what is the correct price? In your opinion today, what is the correct price?
It's at least $24,000 an ounce. Absolutely nothing less than that,
Sir,
and maybe much
sir,
higher than that.
every jeweler in India will go out of business. There's
They
nobody who's
will.
going
I
to be able
know
to
that.
afford it.
I know that, and actually, very few people understand gold. I talk to a lot of jewelers. They're surprised with the actual rise in price of gold. Forget the gold jewelers. I talk to a lot of gold miners. I'm an investor in the gold mining companies. They don't understand the price of gold. They are they are still hedged. Okay, most gold miners are still hedged their gold output for a much lower price than the market price. They keep asking the question, what will happen if prices of the gold falls? I said, there's no way it can fall. You're looking at substantially higher prices in the years ahead. And okay, but they don't understand.
But there are ramifications. One on the good side is whatever gold you have saved up, you're wearing it on your body, you have got it in a
Yeah,
locker, whatever. Your net wealth goes up. But the problem then is if you sell it, you can't buy the same gold back. You can't buy another chain back. It's too expensive. So
correct.
how do you see a rising gold price affect society like India, where
Right.
gold is a central player in the wealth of the family? Central player.
So she, you've asked a very, very key question. Okay, so like although I've said gold prices are going to go 5 or 10 times, that is not a social or an economic situation that is going to be happy for everybody. Okay, when I say gold prices are going to go up, it also means that all prices are going to go up. Okay, maybe gold prices will go up 10 times. Okay, but if you look at the price of egg or milk, it'll go up 2 or 3 times. So all prices are going to go up. So it is going to be an extremely tumultuous time. Okay, but the one thing that we should recognize is this rate is that gold prices going up. It is not the problem. It is a solution to the problem. Okay, the fundamental problem being excessive governments, big governments, central bank monetization of deficits, and the loss of our civil liberties. So these are the fundamental problems, and the solution to these problems have to come in the form of a gold standard that will limit the government. So gold prices going up is a solution to a much, much more fundamental problem than price inflation.
Scary thought. To be frank with you, scary thought. See, one of the reasons why people are hesitating to buy gold, like for example, you can go and buy a gold coin or a gold bar in many stores today in United States. You can just go and buy it, just like you would buy a piece of bread. The thing is, once you get it, it's not so easy. That money is locked up in the form of a gold bar. It's not so easy to. It's you have to go and exchange it for some other money, and that is a process. Which is why
Correct.
Bitcoin, they say, is much better because it's on a click of a button on your phone.
Correct.
You can do the same thing. Which is why the Bitcoin experts say Bitcoin is better than gold.
Right.
And plus they keep saying that Bitcoin, there are only 21 million Bitcoins, therefore the value is going up. But we are not talking about Bitcoin today, we're talking about gold today. So I'll definitely bring you back for Bitcoin, why you think it's going to crash, because I have some thoughts on this. And by the way, I don't know if you have a chance to watch my videos. I've done a lot of monologues on all these things. What is
Sure.
carry
Yeah.
trade? What is strip
Correct.
mining? What is 30-year Treasury bond? Why is it going up and down?
I saw
Who's
the
buying
one.
it? Who's not
Good.
buying?
Yeah.
So lots of stuff I'm doing because I'm trying to educate people. This train is coming. You
It
have to
is.
get ready for it. And today, so people say, so you dollar, you can't keep your money. You can't keep it as dollars. You can't keep it in rupees, any other currency. Everywhere it is the same problem.
Yeah,
What
correct.
can you do? Well, people say, okay, buy land that is irrigable, because if nothing else, you can irrigate and you get food out of
True.
it. So there are
So
all
how
these
does
things.
it?
We'll come back to that on more specific things maybe in next couple of weeks time, whenever you have your
Sure.
thoughts formed on this
Sure. How
solution
does this
part,
is the
right?
way?
How?
How,
Hmm?
how does this is the way to go, if you ask me? Okay, but on gold itself specifically, okay, companies have started coming out with tokenized gold. Okay, wherein you can deposit gold, and they'll give you a debit card, and you can spend in dollars, and they'll debit the amount of gold against it. So
It's
options are
got a
coming up.
bad reputation, my dear man. It's got a bad reputation because a lot of gold index funds that have been floated and are floating around, they told people, you put your money in this index fund, it is fully transferable to gold, only to find out that they don't have the gold. This is
Oh,
this is
okay.
this is
That is particularly true in the US. It's not true in India. Okay, but even
India is
within,
they are more sensible. They don't do this stuff yet.
yeah, that's true. But if you look at the US, okay, there are companies that actually come with a lot of reputation. You've got Sprott Asset Management, you've got Gold Money, you've got Euro Pacific Capital. Okay, these are companies that care about reputation, and they talk about Austrian economics all the time. Okay, so if you go with these reputed players, okay, you will have a way to actually spend your gold.
Yeah,
And if you go back
these
to the history of free
allegations.
bank, no, see,
Yeah.
if you actually go back to the history of free banking in the US in the 1800s, okay, you still had the wildcat banks even back then. Okay, so you are going to have the wildcat equivalents even today. Okay, but you can go with a reputation, and ultimately the good guys will win. I mean, that's how
Very true.
capitalism
Very
works all the time.
Very true. Very true. Now I think let's get back to some questions from our users, because we may be asking questions that are in the
Sure.
exotic sphere rather than in the realistic sphere. So let's just take some questions from here. First question from Own Karma Return. Jai Sri Ram, if gold is at 24,000 per ounce, what would be the silver rate?
Okay, this is an interesting question. If you look at the historical ratio of gold to silver for 5,000 years, okay, it's been 15:1. Okay, which is you can buy 15 ounces of silver for one, okay, for an ounce of gold. I think at this particular point in time, like it's possibly like 80, 90 to 1. I think this ratio will decline from 80 to somewhere maybe 30 to 40 over the next 3-4 years. So silver it's going to outperform gold, and it's going to be one of the few things that will outperform gold.
Very good, sir. Thank you so much. Let's go to the question here. Next question is Pradeep Tumati wants to know, when gold gets to $24,000, what would be dollar to INR ratio? If USD INR fall, then that would be gold price in INR?
Okay, so I kind of avoid talking about the rupee. There are just so many other factors. We can do a separate show on the rupee if you want me to. So I've just used a straightforward conversion to do it, to say that the price of gold is going to be at least 1 lakh per gram. So
Well, there goes the jewelry industry. There goes all these Malabar jewelers. Nobody can afford jewelry anymore.
correct. True.
I mean, they would probably bring old jewelry and say, okay, convert it, give me the new
True.
design. That
True.
industry might take off.
Yeah, yeah. And the bigger problem with the gold jewelry space in India, okay, most operate on this concept of gold metal loans. It's an insane concept. I don't know why these guys do it. Okay, like it just makes valuation of these companies easier for the analysts. Okay, like it makes no sense to do this gold metal loans, but most of the companies do it. So they're going to go out of business for multiple reasons.
Virender Nath wants to know, sir, what would be the effect of yen carry trade unwinding on the gold and silver prices, and when it may start taking effect?
Yeah. Okay. So this is another very good question. If you look at what's been happening for the last decade, is that people have been borrowing in yen and then spending it. Okay, that trade has stopped, especially given the fact that interest rates have started going up in the US. So this is going to put say greater pressure on the dollar, if you ask me, and it's going to push gold prices much higher. Either way, it's going to go up. Okay, but this is going to be the icing on the cake, if you ask me.
Well, what a session. Certainly, I like I said, I told you before we went online that economics is my hobby, and it's a great hobby because you can listen to it all the time. And Dr. Swami, my good friend, will always joke, 2 economists and 3 theories. That's how it is.
It
So
is.
he was
I
the
mean, Swami is amongst the very few economists you can listen to in India and then feel that he's talking sense. There
yes,
are not
yes.
too many other people I listen to. But
Yes, yes, yes. Very true, very true. See, it goes back to the same fundamentals, right?
yeah. Right.
His gaming theory, what's that called? Index number theory,
Index number
is
theory.
used
Correct.
in by the 20 nations that are all consuming euro, because you have
Mhm.
one monetary policy
Correct.
and multiple fiscal policies. You have to have some parity when you're going between countries, and
That is
that's what they use, the index numbers theory, to try and bring some sanity into this whole transactional
correct.
thing.
Correct. In fact,
And
if I
I did actually a
uh,
program also on that eurozone.
oh, okay,
What
okay.
exactly is the problem with
Oh,
the
I've not seen
eurozone?
that. Okay, okay. In fact, if you go back and study the Indian history of Indian budgets, in the last 35 years, there's only one budget that I think is sensible, and that's the 1991 budget, and that was written by Dr. Swami. Most people don't attribute it to him. I mean, he deserves
Yes,
100%
yes,
of the credit
yes,
for it.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
that is the only sensible budget that I've seen. Every other budget after that has been, I don't know, I
So,
mean,
so
probably a C minus or
it's
a
very,
C.
very unfortunate that people remember him for all the wrong reasons. They
Right.
forget about how he was the one who turned the ship, this
Oh,
huge ship
absolutely.
that India was, from
Correct.
socialism to an effective capitalism. And it's
True.
unfortunate. We'll realize it only when things
Yeah.
keep going better and better. Thank you so much, sir.
And the Bharat
And
Ratna to PV Narasimha Rao, I mean, hugely deserving move amongst a very few prime ministers who actually deserve the Bharat Ratnas.
yes, yes, very true, very true. So if you read the book, Half Lion,
Oh, okay.
Narasimha, right? Narasimha is half lion, half
Oh, okay.
man.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So there
Okay.
is a book by Vinay Sitapati, very good scholar from
Oh, yeah,
Ashoka
yeah.
University.
I
Vinay
know. I've
Sitapati.
spoken with them. Yeah.
Yeah, read that book, Half Lion,
Okay.
because it talks about his years as a prime minister.
Okay.
um, fantastic stuff, because one of the first things he does is Swami tells him, because the government collapsed and a new government came in. He said,
Correct.
if I were you, I would look at the economic policy that I put together, or something to that effect. And that's
Mhm.
when the whole thing starts. How do we bootstrap this? How do we take it to the next level, and so on and so forth.
Right.
Of course, IMF forced a lot of things on India. It's not like India suddenly decided to do it. IMF forced it. There were two devaluations back to back within 2 days. India's devaluations, and the second one was done without telling Prime Minister. You
That's all.
know that also. After the fact, the RBI governor says, "Oops, it's already out."
Yeah. But see, I mean, despite all these things, we could have gone the opposite route. We could have gone the way of communism. Okay, but we chose to do the correct thing, like in
Yes.
terms of opening up, liberalization.
Inherently, India is a capitalist country. Inherently, India
It
is a
is.
capitalist country. We will.
At the level of an individual, I mean, we all save, right? It's a huge habit, okay, but it's just squandered by the government.
Yes, 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 yes. This is AVS, sir. Appamitu Sottu. Thank you so much. And I can go on, because I kind of get a little leery about all the governments, the way they conduct business. But thank you once
Right.
again, sir. It was a pleasure having you on
Thank you,
our
Sheil.
channel.
Absolutely
And
wonderful talking with you. Uh, as and when I get onto this Indian channels, all I can talk about is gold and absolutely nothing else, because they're not interested in anything else. So
No,
I'm
no, no.
happy I could
We'll
discuss
talk
about
about
a whole lot
everything
of
under
things.
the sun, sir. We'll talk about everything under the sun. I'm really
Yeah,
looking forward to our conversations in the future. First
sure.
of all, you assume that I don't know anything. I may ask a question, but I may not know a lot of underlying depth. So you have to be patient with me.
No, no, absolutely. I'm happy to converse with everybody that way.
Thank you so much, sir. Namaskar.
Thank you. Bye bye. Namaskar.